The Barack Obama presidency is 1 month old today. Yes, it has been a month since Aretha Franklin's incredible bejeweled inaugural hat. The president celebrated his 1 month in office by doing another day's work. He met with the U.S. Conference of Mayors to talk about the stimulus money headed their way and to give them fair warning: no spending shenanigans.
If a federal agency proposes a project that will waste that money, I will not hesitate to call them out on it and put a stop to it. And I want everybody here to be on notice that if a local government does the same, I will call them out on it and use the full power of my office and our administration to stop it.
Congressional Republicans yesterday said they were going to do a big name and shame thing for any waste in the stimulus as well. Now that the president says that he will too, it's probably back to the GOP in exile strategic drawing board. President Obama also addressed the far-from-finished post-Katrina rebuilding effort in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast today by signing an executive order extending the operation of a federal office for Gulf Coast rebuilding, which would have otherwise closed at the end of the month. That was the fairly productive Friday of the Democratic president today. On the Republican side, today's priority was issuing a fact sheet alerting the nation to what they call President Obama's disappointing month. They're not angry. They're not upset. They're just disappointed. I mean, it's not like he's gotten anything done, right? On his first full day in office, Barack Obama announced strict new rules for lobbyists who want to work in the White House. He announced pay caps for senior White House staff, and Hillary Clinton was confirmed as Secretary of State. The next day, he signed an executive order to close the prison at Guantanamo Bay and the secret CIA prisons overseas. He and Secretary of State Clinton named George Mitchell and Richard Holbrooke special envoys to the Middle East, and he made a huge government statement by making his first agency visit to the formerly neglected State Department, symbolically, therefore, reviving diplomacy. Then he appeared on an Arabic TV network and laid the groundwork for repairing this country's relationship with the Muslim world. Then he signed the Lilly Ledbetter Act so that if women are treated and paid unfairly at work, they can actually do something about it. Then Eric Holder was sworn in as the nation's first African-American Attorney General. Then the president signed the S-chip legislation, which gave 4 million kids health insurance. Then he canceled 77 land leases around Arches National Park in Utah that had been auctioned off to oil and gas companies by the lame duck Bush administration. Then he signed the stimulus bill that he had sought and fought for as part of his plan to stave off the economic apocalypse. Then he announced his plan to save as many as 9 million Americans from home foreclosure. Then he took his first foreign trip to Canada, where busloads greeted him like he was Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, and Wayne Gretzky all rolled into one. Then it was today when, in addition to the Gulf Coast rebuilding effort and the stimulus pep talk with the nation's mayors, the month-old president banned a handful of budget gimmicks that the previous administration had used to make the country's finances look healthier than they actually are. Like, por ejemplo, the Bush administration didn't include the wars in the budget. The wars just, surprise, popped up every year and required shocking emergency funding. The effect of getting rid of these gimmicks is that our country's budget will look much more dire now, which means that President Obama doesn't plan to lie to us about how bad things are. It's almost like a grown-up's in charge or something. How disappointing. It's not like we're not keeping our eyes on the fine print. And the Obama administration's month-old record, it's definitely imperfect. We still do not have a Commerce Secretary. Tom Daschle turned out to be very embarrassing. Judd Gregg turned out to be a very bad idea. The president has made exceptions to this lobbyist rule. We've still got 2 wars and a giant recession to cuddle up with every night. And, this is news, late today, in a Friday news dump, the Obama Justice Department announced that they would continue the Bush administration's position that prisoners at the U.S. military prison in Afghanistan at Bagram Air Base, they said that those prisoners should not have the right to challenge their imprisonment in a real court. That is a big deal. It is news as of tonight, and it is a disappointment. However, looking back at Barack Obama's first month in office, given the royal across-the-board nightmare that President Obama inherited, and given the things that he has accomplished really quickly, what, did the Republicans think he was going to wave a magic wand and turn the whole world into a Willy Wonka chocolate factory or something? What else do you want? Joining us now is Rick Perlstein, Senior Fellow at the Campaign for America's Future and author most recently of the book Nixonland, The Rise of a President and the Fracturing of America. Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
My pleasure, Rachel.
So you are a historian of the modern presidency. How does Barack Obama's first month stack up against other presidents' first months?
You know, no one has done this much this fast since Franklin Roosevelt in, March of 1933. They used to inaugurate the presidents in March. And, within a couple days, he'd completely reorganized the bank system. But no one has ever accomplished anything close to that. I mean, Lyndon Johnson was able to, pass a tax cut. That was a big deal. But of course, he did that on the heels of John F. Kennedy's martyrdom and this great heroic speech in which he said, "Let us continue." But the American system is not set up to make big changes fast, and yet somehow he's been able to make some very big changes very fast.
Yeah, and the politics around this, we talk a lot about the fact that there has been this political resistance to him. The congressional minorities in both houses certainly have made a lot of noise, but they haven't been able to stop him from doing very much. And I wonder how other congressional minorities have comported themselves when the president from the opposing party is really popular. Do they always sort of shake their fists and yell, "No, no, no," impotently like the Republicans in Congress are doing now?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I mean, especially after FDR won his, second-term landslide with, I guess it was 46 states. There were 48 states then. They kind of waved their fists and they were impotent. And eventually some of them settled down and said, okay, well, this New Deal stuff, it's here to stay, but we can do it a little better, a little more efficiently. And, some people mocked it as the dime store New Deal, the same New Deal, only cheaper. And, FDR's brilliance and what Obama seems to be going for is just to turn the opposition party into this petty, whiny, petulant, ineffectual faction. And if you look at, the approval ratings for people like Boehner and the Republicans in Congress, it seems to be going pretty well for him right now.
Bill Clinton said today that he gives Obama an A for his first month on the job, but he said that he thinks that Obama should be more hopeful, should sound more hopeful when he talks about the economy. And of course, the idea of Obama's oratory, his communication skills as being a great key to his power, this thing that allows him to transcend political fighting and reach people just directly to the American public, I think is an important part of understanding how he succeeds and sometimes how he fails. What do you make of that criticism from Clinton?
It seemed a little ungracious to me. I mean, let's say sour grapes. I mean, President Clinton, for all that he did achieve, he tried to pass, what was it, $12 billion stimulus bill when he came into office, and it fell flat on its face. President Obama is facing a country facing unprecedented problems, the worst economic time since the Depression. It does not behoove a statesman to pretend it doesn't exist.
Rick, thinking about Obama's pressure from the right or the lack thereof, I think it's also appropriate to think about pressure from the left. When you look at the modern presidency, are presidents better served in the long run when there is pressure on them from their base, or do they do better with just unqualified support from their base?
Oh, absolutely. The wisest presidents who are left of center understand that they have a symbiotic relationship with progressive activists to their left. I mean, the most famous story is, a bunch of activists coming to the White House and coming up with some radical idea, and FDR saying, I agree with you. Now make me do it. He meant go into the streets, put the pressure on me. There's no LBJ without Martin Luther King. And, frankly, right now, as we're facing this kind of razor's edge question over what's going to happen in this entitlement reform summit on Monday, half the sort of liberal bloggers think, oh, well, this is just a feint that Obama's doing to get cover for, advancing health care, and half are worried that he's talking about, cutting Social Security. All we need to do is put pressure on him and let him know he can go no further.
Rick Perlstein, author of the book Nixonland, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Have a great weekend, Rick.
You too, Rachel.